Sure. With a evening gata, an evening verse. It's called. It's evening, so I'll recite it. You can read it when you go by there. And it goes, let me respectfully remind you. Time swiftly passes by and opportunity is lost. Each of us should strive to awaken. Awaken. Do not squander your life. It's a friendly reminder. Like a gun to your head. Before it's too late. Wake up and then die. But don't die before you're awake. So we have this another kind of duality or unity of opposites in this practice. That we want to be calm and at ease, accept things as they are. And as Dogen wrote in the Buddha, he was paraphrasing the Buddha, you should practice like you have a sword hanging over your head. Like, so which one do I do? Most of us would choose the easy way. Be peaceful and easy. But the saying we have in English is, ignorance is bliss. But they're not at odds and they're not a contradiction. They just seem sometimes to feel, well, how, it's a koan. How do I combine this paradox of wanting to be really at ease and peaceful and present and accepting? And accept my faults as well as human failings and, limitations that I will accept and then continue to be aware moment by moment. And the urgency that, there's no time to waste. Because another wasted moment is gone forever in the cesspool of anger and aggression and evil and ignorance. Neither I'm contributing to one or the other. So that seems pretty urgent. And the Buddha called the Dharma the middle way. And the middle way does not mean I'll take, if it's either 100 degrees boiling hot, like urgent, or 0, like just no temperature, that middle way is 50. No, that's not the middle way. Like I'll have a little bit of discomfort, but that's enough. It's not like the halfway. The middle way, he meant, is avoiding all extremes. The extreme of saying that nothing matters, right? Or that, and he talked about like nihilism, that nothing really exists. It's all an illusion, it doesn't matter. Whether we kill or whether we live, it's an illusion, it doesn't really matter. Or that everything is self and so important to me. The extremes were about how I individually as a self take it. Do I take it as nothing matters, or do I take it as everything is so important to me? Both of those extremes are extremes of the self. The middle way is avoiding the extremes of the self. And it turns our attention from my own self-concern of either ignoring or attaching to world concern. Well, like, what's necessary in this situation now? Someone just asked me, what if we're just trying to be present, then what if I have a good idea? Do I ignore it? Because like the idea came out of the blue and I was supposed to be paying attention to my breath or my walking. Should I just like ignore it? What if it's a really great idea? So the being present and the mindfulness is very much about, are we able to encourage positive states of mind and to discourage and not, give energy to negative states of mind. The negative states of mind being, attachment, aversion, ill will, hatred, aggression, jealousy, fear, anxiety, negative states of mind cause us to view others in negative ways and then to behave or act or speak in negative ways that are harmful. When you see that arising, yeah, you bet. I'm not going to choose to pursue that. If I am awake enough to notice that that's arising, the wakefulness here is to notice in my daily life what is helpful versus what is harmful. And to make that basic decision moment by moment. And to answer the call of what's necessary now. Sure, if I'm doing walking meditation, and a solution to a problem that's been bothering me or I needed to come up with arises from that open mental space. And when you're in meditation, sometimes things come up from, where did that come up from? Years ago, decades ago, something comes up. Because your mental space is now more generous, I'll say generous, and less, narrow. When it becomes less narrow, more broad, by definition, is going to allow more from your subconscious and from your deep past to arise. Things that you may have forgotten. Doesn't mean you need to then, cling to and hold on to everything that comes up because it's, important or old. It doesn't mean you reject it. It means with the same awareness that we give to anything. If I'm aware of sounds, and there's a car honking, or there's, birds singing, or there's someone's telephone, fine. I'm gonna notice it, acknowledge it, but not, become involved. Let's say there's a fire alarm. Is my, response going to be the same? Well, that'd be unwise. That just would be harmful. I don't want to ignore reality. I don't want to grasp it. I want to wisely engage in a way that is making the right choice at the right time. And I can do that by moment, observing before I react through my habitual reactions of, like and dislike, good and bad. So in formal practice, we are making this sort of, area in our lives to be more intentionally exclusive. Like I'm just going to pay attention to senses, to mind sense, to observe, to not react. Yeah. But then there's what I mentioned to the person I was in conversation with, informal practice. Outside of retreat or outside of your sitting practice, informal practice means everything outside of formal practice. The rest of your time, the rest of your day that you're awake is informal practice. If you become committed and dedicated to a path of enlightenment or awakening in your life, of really cultivating a good heart and mind, then there's not a moment of your day which is not included. Now that might seem a little overwhelming, but it's actually the most natural thing in the world. It's the most natural thing in the world. Because the alternative is, how much of my time and my day do I want to be driven by unconscious, desires? Well, that's more scary, isn't it? Like, that's more disturbing, rather than to contemplate, perhaps, the gentle responsibility of starting to be conscious more of the time. So in the informal practice, we want to be more aware, we want to be more conscious, we want to have more intention in our choices of ceasing from harm and increasing, good and benefit. And the intentions of metta, of loving kindness and compassion, are key to understanding what kind of intentions we're talking about when I say ceasing from harm and increasing the good, your good and the good of others. It's not complex. It's actually straightforward, but what makes it difficult is that you need to be diligent. Right? You have to keep on it, because we are so well trained to retreat into the monastery of the self. Different type of retreat. So our retreat, which is called the Ordinary Mind, Everyday Mind Retreat, is again inviting us to that theme and that basic truth that your practice of becoming and realizing your Buddha nature, your original mind, is the most ordinary thing in the world. It's everything you do. Everything you do. So when someone says, I'm new to practice, I assume you're talking about formal meditation. But nobody's new to trying to become a better, more loving, generous, and caring person, which is what this practice is about. There are certain techniques that the Dharma brings into it, but this is the bottom line. I want to share with you a couple passages from Dogen about how he expresses the everyday activity in his chapter called Everyday Activity. In the domain of the Buddha ancestors, drinking tea and kneading rice is everyday activity. I have several sections, and I was going to say tonight I'm going to talk about rice again, because for some reason they always go back to rice. This having tea and rice has been transmitted over many years and is present right now. Like I was talking about the great Buddha transmission. According to Dogen, it's about tea and rice. Thus, the Buddha ancestors' vital activity of having tea and rice comes straight to us. In the domain of Buddha ancestors, there was always something extraordinary. Sitting alone. I find that really a remarkable sentence. In the domain of the Buddha ancestors, there's always something extraordinary. Sitting alone. Now that is really quite reassuring. Even though I'm calling this ordinary mind retreat, and he calls this chapter everyday activity, within that everyday, there is the extraordinary, the ability of a human being, such as yourselves, to choose to just sit. In the face of all the calls you have to become involved with worldly things, that you choose to just sit. And sit alone. Even in the midst of all others, you are all sitting alone. That's extraordinary. That's an extraordinary activity. I think we should reflect upon that when we do sit. And when you do sit alone, hopefully after the retreat, when you do wake up on Sunday morning and you sit alone, and you remember Dogen's words, how extraordinary. In the domain of the Buddha ancestors, there was always something extraordinary sitting alone. Here's the next sentence that you should take to heart. I implore. Being allowed to totally sit is itself an extraordinary thing. Being allowed to totally sit is in itself an extraordinary thing. This is a message from the 13th century, straight to us. We tend to think that our lives are so busy. Our urban environments are always calling us. Wherever any human being has been living in the past 10,000 years with other human beings, it's probably been very busy. It's probably been very busy. And there was all these noise, and there were always thin walls, and there were always other people invading your space. And there was always work to be done. And probably in the past there was more work to be done. Because they actually had to collect firewood and not just flick a switch. And they probably had to go carry buckets of water somewhere and not just turn on the tap. Having hot water to bathe yourself? Being allowed to totally sit alone is the most extraordinary thing. How quickly we forget the privilege of being allowed to totally sit alone. And how extraordinary it is to have that privilege. And whether it's because you have all the comforts and the time and the wealth, or whether it's because even in the midst of poverty and hardship and work, you choose it. You choose to take a minute or take a time or retreat or go ordain. Whatever situation in the past thousands of years, the human beings have made that their practice. Being allowed to totally sit is itself an extraordinary thing. But woe to us who don't appreciate that, and we think it's only extraordinary when something special happens during that sitting. And Dogen is reminding us that the sitting in itself is extraordinary. Who are you to want more than that? Well, exactly who we think we are. Special and deserving. What would Dogen say? But get this. One more sentence of this passage, and then it'll be already too much. Even more extraordinary is, I'm having rice in Tiantong. I didn't make it up. Even more extraordinary is, there's a dash. I'm having rice in Tiantong. I remember Master Dogen, started a whole new school of Zen in Japan after practicing and searching in China for the greatest masters, writing these amazing books and opening a monastery that is continued, Ehiji, that is continued to this day for the past 800 years to train monks in the most rigorous training center there is in Japan, which probably means in the world, as far as Zen goes. But for him, it comes down to two things: sitting and eating. That's the most remarkable activity you could ever imagine doing. And if you don't experience that, he'd probably say, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, what's wrong with you? Quite amazing. Quite amazing. Now, Dogen does that though. He kind of drops these bombs and then moves on. So you're left with the pieces of yourself lying around thinking, what do I do now? The koans are somewhat helpful. And so is some of the poetry. And I want to read a couple of koans that will complement him. From the Book of Equanimity. I know it just sounds odd, but again, they're about rice. Because it just seems that's what all these masters are fixated upon. In case 5, the price of rice. A monk asked Quinyan, we're on the Book of Equanimity. A monk asked Quinyan, case 5, the price of rice. What is the great meaning of Buddhism? Quinyan said, what's the price of rice in Lulin? That was his answer. What is the great meaning? And Quinyan says, what's the price of rice? Why did Bodhidharma come to the West? Joshua was asked. What's the great way? Joshua asked Nansen. Ordinary mind is a great way. What's more ordinary than having to make a budget for your meals, your evening meal? What's the price of rice in this town? That's actually what I need. If you want to know what the Buddha way is, I have to buy some rice for the monastery, and I need to know where to do that. Do you know what the price of rice is there? That's more helpful than this discussion. That's going to serve me and my monks better. The next case is equally part of that, which is case 12, planting the fields. Dizang asked Zishan, where do you come from? Dishan said, from the south. Dizan said, how's Buddhism in the south these days? Zishan says, there's extensive discussion. And they're having lots of debates. They're debating what's better, the north, the south, the north, the south. Should I do shikantaza, just sitting? Should I do koan study? What's the great way? What should I do? They're really discussing what the great way is. Really important discussions. Dizan said, how can that compare to me here planting the fields and making rice to eat? Zishan said, what can you do about the world? Dizana said, what do you call the world? These are pointers. These are pointers. They're not telling us what necessarily we should be talking about, what we should be thinking about, or what we should be concerned with. But they're reminding us that we have to pay really close attention to what is helpful, what is necessary, and what is really going to serve in this situation. Sometimes, perhaps in the monastery, perhaps in the school or in the classroom, a debate and a discussion about theoretical topics is good and helpful in some way. Well, I'd like to end with case 20, which is on the end of the page there. The most intimate. Dizang asked Fei Yan, and Dizang was the one in the last case as well. Where are you going? Fei Yan said, I'm going around on a pilgrimage. Visiting the famous temples. Dizang said, what is the purpose of pilgrimage? Which really cuts to the root. It's like you're going somewhere and your friend asks you, where are you going? And you say, oh, I'm going on a retreat. And you feel kind of good about yourself. And then your friend asks, what's the point of a retreat? Like, why would you go on a retreat? What's it for? What's it good for? If someone asks you, well, you should definitely ask yourself that before you go on a retreat. Why am I doing this? What do I want to get out of it? But Fei Yan luckily said, and it showed that he actually had a pretty good idea. His reply was, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Why is that so hard for so many of us to say? Why is that so hard when actually it is so liberating? It is so liberating. It's such a weight off your shoulders to have to prove something, to have to know something, to have to make an argument, to have to win a discussion. It's such a relief not to have to prove yourself. To be able to say, when someone asks you, why do you meditate? And you can say, you know what? I actually don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm not quite sure. That probably would make more sense then the type of often confused answer we give, because of this and this and this and this, or whatever, and then you hear it back, like, God, that's what I said. But that simple, straight, and honest, I don't know, which is not saying, oh yeah, I'm selfless. It's not saying, oh, I'm beyond knowing. No. It's open. It's curious, inquisitive. It's moving. That's the path. The path of not knowing. And Dogen said, in the most beautiful statement, not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate. And that brings us back to all the koans and Dogen's talk about rice and tea, and rice and tea. And one more time, rice and tea. Because he's not really talking about rice and tea. It's every object in the universe. It's every activity that you do in your life that you think, I know what I'm doing. I know what rice tastes like. I know what tea tastes like. I know what it is to, go to work. I know what it is to drive down the street. I know what it is to pick up the phone. I know what it is to walk. I know what it is to breathe. Then you put a mask with your face on it in between you and your life. And that mask of you is a separation. The separation of the expert, of the knower. But the real intimacy is when the mask comes off. You can say, here I am exposed. I don't know. So I need help. And that help is the refuge we take. Looking for help in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Whatever you understand that as. The Buddha of an enlightened mind. The Dharma of teachings that can help me. And the Sangha of the people around me that I can turn to and say, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Do you? And that is the most intimate thing. Because when you can say you don't know, even for the most simplest thing like a cup of tea, you will pay more attention in order to know better. And that paying attention is intimate.